I think we're at the maximum hype curve right now. I mean, it's, everyone wants to talk about it, and it's a little messy because it overflows into our private lives. It's every commercial you see on TV, the robot's ordering its own spare parts because it knows. And I've never been to a plant where a procurement guy would let a robot order its own spare parts. But
Yeah.
that's if I relate it to any technology curve, in 1983, and I'm giving away my age here, I was on a bus to something called Robot 7 in Chicago. And robots were going to take over the world. And all of McCormick Place was full of robot vendors who 90% of them don't exist anymore. And what happened was robots found this. If you own a car, it was welded with a robot. If you own a car, it was painted with a robot. But generally speaking, there's still a lot of people touching parts in manufacturing because they weren't the right place for the technology. I think to tie that back to ERP and I think there are going to still be decision points throughout this management of this complex. Arturo said it. This is a very complex business system. I think that what we'll find over time is there'll be some projects that fail and AI isn't a great fit, and there'll be places where it does fit. And that's my confidence is that that's where we want to be without trashing the system, trying to force AI into every spot possible.
Yeah, I mean, going back to basic project management and the many ERP or AI projects or even automation projects, like sometimes like something like 90%, if not more, fail, and you're going to have to find what works and doesn't work, but understand that failure is part of the learning process, and I think that's key there. Anybody else like 5 years ahead from now? Like, what does it look like?
Yeah, I think
5 years ahead, I would say, as Arturo said earlier, there's got to be a lot of streamlining of the user interfaces of the products. They're going to be more simplified. There's going to be more automation of the workflows. That's just the, kind of like what we have today. How do we take advantage of AI? But then beyond that, again, with the NLP, with even like image processing, the machine vision, with, those types of capabilities, I would assume there's going to be a lot more of using that. Like, right now, if you have to take inventory of material manually, you can take advantage of machine vision to be able to take that kind of a inventory taking automatically, or using, more advanced OCR capabilities in processing your invoices that you potentially have to do that manually today. So there's definitely going to be a lot more riding on, just the multimedia AI capabilities, both voice and image.
Yeah, I'll add my thoughts real quick, and I think in the next 5 years, I actually think it'll be a revolution of software. I think, again, going back to my point, akin to the introduction of the iPhone and the touchscreen, where Uber in 2004 seemed impossible, but in 2014, 10 years later, it was possible. I think we're going to see similar things where things were impossible 5 years ago, in 5 years are going to be possible. And so I think ERP has a responsibility to introduce those cutting edge technologies into the current workflows so that the customers can then adopt it.
So
real quick. I was gonna say the Uber thing is a really good point but it's an interesting point because Uber started back then and they weren't actually cost positive until like last year. So,
but can I just go to Glenn's point where he said, jumping back, was it to 19 whatever?
81,
to
83.
go forward, we need to go back, I believe, to when I was a kid. They were telling us you need to book your place in your country club and your tennis club because there's going to be no space left, because there's going to be no job for you left to do. This is addressing the AI is going to steal everybody's jobs. I don't know about you guys, but I've never worked as hard in my life as I do today. So in 5 years' time, how will that have changed? If we look at blockchain and IoT, all wonderful technologies, but none of them have taken over the world. AI, I agree, is a massive step change, but how much will it change? I don't know.
Yeah, I think we'll see, right? I know that when automation came out, one of the biggest things you saw is all of the platform vendors, be it Salesforce to ServiceNow to the ERP players all started to bring in automation, right? So we're going to start seeing the same thing. We're going to start seeing every large company that is needed to grow 18% every year, they're all going to bring this in and they're going to say, here's what the value is and here's where that looks like. But again, to the Uber thing, like maybe they do it, but they're not profitable with it. And so there's a chance of, again, that failure, or again, that growth state of being democratized, like we've talked about here. So there's some wins there. Yeah.
Just to challenge that a little bit, Doug, I'd also be careful to over-index, Uber being not profitable, because that was also kind of how the market behaved, right? Like
how it works, right? Yeah.
Years, right. Yeah. Like
funding,
growth over anything. So we also need to be a little careful there. But what I was going to say is I think, again, it's going back to solving very specific problems. And I think the companies that do that the best, and it's going slow to go fast, right? So over the next 5 years, it's going to be a ramp up. So it doesn't mean like, oh no, like I have to implement AI like tomorrow. No, I think what it does mean though is starting to solve, getting to those outcomes that were mentioned earlier. So it's like solving for very specific problems. And by the way, if that problem involves language, large language models are really good at that, right? So I think if approach that way, I think it'll get to that vision, right, of the 5 years. And the companies that do that the best are going to be able to make that transition.
Yeah, even your companies that are multi-language or different countries helping out or coming into different, cultural and individuals, like that does help with the language bias there or language understanding, even from a mentor-mentee relationship too. Yeah.
And look at the vendors. They weren't always entirely successful. SAP launched Leonardo in 2017, originally as an IoT solution for everything, right? Does anyone know Leonardo anywhere else? It fell down because it tried to be too many things that promoted it through from IoT into AI, and it just wasn't ready. The compute wasn't ready. The maturity of the models wasn't ready, and it basically fell down. But look, here we are, a couple of years later, and we've got Joule, and Joule is flying. I've played around with it, and it's fantastic. So yeah, 100% agree. There'll be some failures along the way, but I think we're at that inflection point now where it's commercially viable. But to the point, you've got to have specific problems that you want to point at. And like any technology, it's agnostic, right? It's how you use it that determines its value. So it's exciting times. In 5 years' time, I'll be the contrarian again, and I would say, what stops an AI sitting on an SME company's a technology stack and doing passive learning, and then basically taking over the business logic and routines and just running it natively? Why not?
Yeah, I mean, you could say that, although luckily AI is not that smart yet. So there are some that's some future.
It's getting close.
It's getting, especially now that data used to be the gold, right? However data you can get, now is compute power, right? So now we're looking at how much compute is there, and the hope, I'm guessing at this point from the people that are putting all this compute into play, be it Microsoft and the other, and OpenAI and everyone else, is that's where they're hoping to get to that next stage of potentially AGI and even ASI, which is way down the line. Hopefully, we'll see. There's lots of different things in the market, people talking about it.